All right, everybody. Eric Riles here. Thank you again so much for waiting and for joining us on this no doubt busy Thursday afternoon. It is 1:02, so we are going to get started, and those folks who filter in late will simply have to catch up. Good afternoon, everybody. On today's call, we are going to be looking at the VerdictSearch tool offered by ALM Intelligence and all the wonderful things that it can do. And to walk you through that tool, I am pleased to introduce and turn things over to your presenter for this afternoon, Mr. Glenn Koch, Editor-in-Chief of VerdictSearch. Glenn, take it away.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon to everyone in the East, and good morning to everyone in the West. As Eric said, my name is Glenn Koch. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of VerdictSearch, and today I am going to demonstrate some of the more common uses of VerdictSearch's online research platform. I will show you how to identify case-specific information that will help you both at trial and in settlement negotiations. So your time is valuable, and I'm going to pack as much information into as little time as possible here. But before I jump in, I want to provide an overview of VerdictSearch, who we are and how we do what we do. And that will give us just a couple of more minutes to allow for any stragglers before we get to the main segment of the presentation. So as you probably know, VerdictSearch reports civil cases from around the country. Although we've been around for 16 years, our case database extends back as far as 30 years in some states, and it comprises more than 200,000 cases. New cases are added every day, and we add a total of about 400 every month. We primarily cover personal injury cases, but we also have extensive coverage of employment disputes, intellectual property disputes, and some other case types sprinkled in. Now, I'm sure many of you have used our competitors at one time or another, preferably just one time. There are two big differences between us and them. I'll demonstrate one in a couple of minutes when we get to the search functionality. The other is in the quality and the accuracy of our case reporting. Our case reports are written by professional journalists who average 6 years here at VerdictSearch alone, and our reports are based on interviews with attorneys. We solicit attorneys from both sides of the case to make sure the information that we're publishing is accurate. Other verdict reporting outlets will typically accept information just from the winning attorney and publish it with little more than a light proofread. Or they may write the report entirely off of court documents, such as the complaint. And as we all know, the problem there is that complaints are broadly worded and they rarely hit the level of detail that's addressed during the trial, particularly with injuries, other areas. As you know, the injuries and facts that are argued during the trial often aren't the same ones that were pleaded in the complaint. So the information that we're providing comes from the resolution of the case and is thoroughly vetted and sharply detailed. Now, as I mentioned, we have more than 200,000 cases available for searching. The most common uses of our research tool are, one, to value injuries, both in terms of what a jury may award and what an insurer may pay as a settlement. Use number two, to research expert witnesses in terms of how often they testify, for whom they testify, and what they may have testified to in the past. And three, to research fact patterns, particularly in complex cases such as med-mal cases, products liability cases, some types of premises liability cases, to see how a case similar to yours may have been argued in the past. Now, there are two ways of performing research. One way is to use our telephone research department. You can simply call a research professional, tell him or her what you need, and they'll do the research for you. Very easy. They're particularly helpful with complex searches, and they typically turn a search around in about 48 hours, but they can usually provide same-day service if that's what you need. The other research method, the one we're going to discuss today, is our online research platform, which you can now see. It's accessed by VerdictSearch.com, which is on your screen at the moment. If you are a new user, you would likely come to VerdictSearch.com and visit here, get your free trial. If you are a current user, you would go up to the upper right-hand corner where my cursor is right now and log in. Either way, once you do that, it's going to bring you to our search platform, which is now pictured on your screen. Take a good look at it. I'm going to scroll it down a little bit so you can see the meat of it. The most important thing, or the first thing you'll probably notice, is that there are many search fields here, 16 to be precise. And that's the other difference between us and our competitors. We let you tweak and modify the search in nearly every way imaginable to get results as specific as you need or even as broad as you need. The tool also is intuitive and it's extremely easy to use, as I'm going to demonstrate. So let's get to that right now. I'm going to walk you through a search. As I mentioned, one of the most popular search functions is case valuation. How much is my case worth? Now, when I'm pitching this tool to attorneys, the most common rebuttal I hear is, I know how much my case is worth. And they probably do. What I say to that is, I'm sure you do, but do you know better than your adversary? Because your adversary may have numbers and negotiating points that you don't have. For instance, let's say you feel your case is worth $600,000 if it goes to verdict. Let's say you figure a good settlement mark is $300,000. But when you're negotiating a settlement, wouldn't it be helpful to know that the insurer has paid well more than that $300,000 target twice, say in the past year or 18 months? That would be helpful information, right? And we can tell you that. Or wouldn't you want to negotiate downward from the largest settlement or verdict amount? That's another piece of information we can provide you. And it's just two of the negotiating points that you can uncover just by doing searches here on VerdictSearch.com. So let's jump right in. I'll show you how to find all that information, and we're going to begin with an injury valuation search. So let's take a look at our search platform here. As I said, we have these 16 different parameters you can use to search by. The first one we're going to use for an injury valuation search is, of course, the injury field, which I'm circling now with my cursor. When you click on the arrow in this field, it will populate with broad injury types. And I apologize because we're running a little bit slow today. Here we are. So you can see on the list here as I'm scrolling down through it, these are very basic injury types: brain, chest, elbow, head, knee, and it goes all the way down to the bottom here. And of course, what you want to do here, most people when they're doing searches don't want to search this broadly. Some do, but most don't. So if you don't, what you can do here is fold out these things. Let's use knee, for example. When you fold it out, you're seeing ACL injuries, dislocations, fractures of the various components of the knee, meniscus tears, patellar injuries, pretty much any kind of injury you can imagine. So for the purpose of our little exercise here, let's say we're interested in searching for meniscus tears. You can get super specific and choose either the lateral meniscus or the medial meniscus, but my experience is that most attorneys value those about the same. So let's just do a search for either meniscus torn. And you can see I've clicked that off there. Now, before I exit this field, I want to direct your attention over here to the results menu. I'm circling it now with my cursor. When I click off of this area over here, keep an eye on this. So just focus your eye on this, and I'm going to click off right now, and it's calculating the results. And what it shows you is that in our database, we have 2,361 cases involving meniscus tears. That's a huge number, obviously, but frankly, nobody wants to search through 2,361 cases. That's too many. So we want to get more specific here. So since we're valuing an injury, the next thing we're going to do is go to the award type field. And when I click on that one and unfold it, you can see it's got the various different types of ways in which a case can be disposed: decisions, verdicts, settlements. So since we're valuing an injury again, we're going to click on verdict plaintiff. Now watch here again on the estimated results. When I click off, now we're down to 1,007 cases. A ton of cases, but still too many for us to go through for our purposes here. So let's narrow this down more. We can go right up here where I'm circling now to the state menu, and that one is kind of self-explanatory. When we unfold it, it's got all 50 states. So let's click on New York. And when we click off of New York, we're down to 218 documents. Point of reference here, one of my functions here at VerdictSearch is to edit the New York Weekly publication. I've been doing that for just about 15 years. So the depth of my knowledge is in New York attorneys, New York law firms, New York expert witnesses. So I'm going to be using New York for all of the searches we perform today because it's what I'm most familiar with. Okay, back to the search. So as I said, we've got 218 New York cases involving plaintiff's verdicts for cases in which the plaintiff tore a meniscus. Let's get more specific than that. When we go over to this menu here, the venue menu, and I unfold that one, let's select Bronx County. So we only want cases in Bronx County, which if you're in New York, you know that that's the most notorious plaintiff-friendly county in the state, and it's probably the most plaintiff-friendly county in the United States, or at least one of the top 2 or 3. So when we click off that, we see now we're down to 69 documents. This is a nice number, 69 cases involving meniscus tears in Bronx County. And again, it's only plaintiff's verdicts. We have more cases available if you want different results. So from here, you can take these 69 cases, or you can get even more specific. Let's get more specific. If you go down to where I'm circling now, here's where we have plaintiff's demographics. And that's really important because, as we'll touch on in another webinar, insurers view plaintiffs very differently. So let's plug in our plaintiff demographics. Let's say we're representing a middle-aged woman. So we'll plug in ages in the range of 30 to 50, and you see now we're down to 41 cases. And we're going to select female from the gender menu, and now we're down to 23 cases. So we've got 23 cases in which a woman between the ages of 30 and 50 tore a meniscus, and the case went to a verdict in Bronx County. If you wanted to get even more specific, you could use our date range field, which as I unfold it, you'll see you could just select cases from the past month, the past year, 5 years, 10 years, or you could select the custom one and select any period of time you were interested in. But for the purposes of what we're doing here, I think we've got what we want. We've got 23 specific cases, and we are now ready to go ahead and conduct our search. So we will click on the red search button, and it will grab the results from our database, and it brings us to the result field. And again, you can see up here, it's displaying that we generated 23 results off of this search. Now, to the right, the main part of the screen, we have a list of all the cases that were generated, and I'll get back to that in a second. First, I want to direct your attention over to the left bar here, where we have a series of filters. This will let us do some things that we may not have done on the previous page. For instance, if you look right here where it says type of injury, let's say we want to get even more specific, we could unfold this surgeries bar here and perhaps select the same case with the meniscus tears, but only if the plaintiff had arthroscopic surgery as well, or perhaps if there was debridement involved. So that's another way we can get more specific here. Another filter, if perhaps you were interested, we could select only cases in which the injury was a result of a slip, trip, or fall, only motor vehicle cases, whatever you're interested in. Down a little bit further, we have a date bar here. If, for example, you had way too many cases to deal with, you might say, let's filter this a little bit more. And you can go anywhere along the slider here, and it's dynamically displaying how many results you're going to get. So now if we only go from 2005 forward, we're down to 22 documents. So you can move this wherever you want in the process until you get the amount of cases that you want. So let's clear out of that. And then the last filter here, you can also just select on an award range if that's what you're interested in. Okay. Back to the cases. So what you're looking at over here are all the cases that were generated by this search. Right now they are sorted in by date, but you can also sort them in order of descending amount of the award, whichever is better for you. The case results here are only shells of the full report. So what you're looking at here where I'm circling is the amount of this particular case. Of course, they're all going to be plaintiff's verdicts because that's what we were searching for. You've got the caption of the case here. You've got a list of all the parties here. This field is, I believe it's the first 75 characters of the fact narrative of the case. And then below that is, I believe, the first 50 characters of the injury recitation. And if you want to see everything, all you have to do is click on View Document, and it will load up the full case report for that one. And now you can see when we load the full case report, we've got all the attorneys and all the experts listed. We've got a nice deep recitation of the facts and allegations, and even deeper recitation of the injuries. We've got the result of the case. We've got a breakdown of how the jury apportioned the award, and then we've got some other trial details. So everything you need is right here. Now, if you don't want to read the cases right here and now, you can do some other neat things with it. For instance, if you look up here, we've got some options. You can instead add these cases to your briefcase and come back and look at them anytime. For example, when I click Add to Briefcase, it pops up and it gives me the option of using my briefcase, Glenn's briefcase, or creating a new one. So if I select Glenn's briefcase, I can save all of these cases to my briefcase. And now anytime I want to view them, that particular search is there. And for all the searches you can do, you can save them all individually to your briefcase for quick reference anytime you need them. You can also print these all out on paper if you want to take them on the train home with you or wherever you're going. You can export them to a file, or you can email them to yourself or anybody else for that matter for convenient viewing. Okay, now, so we've demonstrated how you would go about running a search to value an injury if the case goes to trial. Let's shake it up a bit. Let's go backward from here. back to our search field. And you can see that the pink areas have preserved everything that we searched during our initial search. So we're going to change some of these up just a little bit. Let's say, for example, we're not yet interested in finding out what a jury may award for this particular case. Let's focus on settlements. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the award type field, which I'm circling now. We're going to clear everything out, and we're going to go back in, and we're going to select settlements, and above that, mediated settlements. And when we click off that, we see we've got 11 documents. From there, we can do something even better. We go down to the bottom of this field, and we have an insurance carrier field. So let's just type in an insurer's name. Let's pick Travelers, for example. And you can see here we've got 2 documents in our database in which Travelers settled a Bronx case involving a meniscus tear for a woman between the ages of 30 and 50. This is the most specific piece of information you can get. If you're negotiating with Travelers, you want to know what they've paid out for this exact claim in the past. And you also want to know if they're offering you less than what they've offered these other people because you're not getting a good deal. So that's how we would do an injury valuation search. And I remind you that if you've got questions, please send them in. If it's relevant to what we're doing at the moment, I'll address it right then and there. If it's not, we'll address it at the end of the webinar. So I'm going to clear out all the fields, and we're going to start over. I'm going to show you another type of search. This one is an expert witness search. Now, when you get to trial, as you know, one of the key factors to victory is getting the jury to believe your experts rather than the other side's experts, and you've all got tricks for doing that. We can help you do that here. Again, I'm going to tap on my New York knowledge here, and we're going to do a little search on one of New York's most well-known IME orthopedists. Her name is Lisa Nason. So if you look at the expert field here, you can either search for an expert on our database by typing in the first and last name, or you can just type the last name if you're not sure of the first name, or you can search by area of expertise. Both have uses. Let's search for Dr. Nason. We're going to type in her name, Lisa Nason, and when I click off that, technical difficulties, when I click off that, oh, I'm sorry, we had Travelers in there, okay. When I click off that, we get 94 cases in our database involving Dr. Lisa Nason. Now, 94 isn't necessarily a lot, particularly if it's an expert who's been testifying for many years. They can easily accumulate 94 appearances. So let's narrow that down a little bit. We used the date range field in our last search. Let's use it again. Let's just focus on the past 5 years. Now we're down to 88 cases. She's relatively new to this game, so almost all of her appearances have occurred in the past, actually probably 3 years, but 5 years is what we're going to use. 88 appearances in 5 years. Now we're starting to get into some heavy-duty expert testifying. Let's take it one step further. What we want to do here is filter out any cases that may have settled before trial because it's unlikely that she would have testified, of course, in those scenarios. So we go to the award type field, and we're only going to select cases that ended in a verdict. And now when we click off, we find that there are 76 documents in the past 5 years in which Dr. Nason has testified. 76 documents in 5 years. That means she's testifying in an average of about 15 times a year, which is maybe once every 3 to 4 weeks. That's heavy-duty activity, and that's something you can use when you're cross-examining her. We can get even more diabolical if we go back to this insurer field, and because I happen to know her affiliation, if we type in the insurer with whom she is affiliated, which is Geico. Sorry for the typo. We come up with 44 documents. So 44 cases in the past 5 years in which Dr. Nason has testified on behalf of Geico. It's almost as though she's a Geico employee, right? This is helpful stuff to know when you're cross-examining somebody. Equally helpful is if you're able to catch the expert in a contradiction of something that he or she has said in the past. And the way you can do that is by actually running the search here. The first time you didn't even need to run the search because you got the information you needed without even pressing the search button. But when we run the search, now we've got all 44 cases in which Dr. Nason actually testified. And what you can do then is open up each case. This requires a little bit of time, of course, but you've got time because you're preparing rather early. So you can open up each case, you go through the case and go through the narrative. And in this one, for example, I'm highlighting it now, you can see that it's got a little snippet of the testimony that she provided in the case. In this instance, she agreed that the injuries were related to the accident, but she thought that they resolved without residual effects. Now that's a rather innocuous piece of testimony. Sometimes they say stuff that's going to get them in trouble down the road. Sometimes they don't. But if you're reading through all these things, you're increasing the likelihood that you're going to find something that's contradicting something that he or she has said during the trial. So that's search number 2. Now, a neat thing that I didn't show you in the first search, if we go back to the top of the results field here, at the very top here, it displays a search summary. Now, this is just a recap of what you were searching for when you did this search, in case you forgot. So we searched all states. We had a date range of the past 5 years. We wanted just verdicts for Dr. Lisa Nason in cases in which she represented GEICO. Let's say we're doing this search now, but our trial date is not coming up for about 6 months. So let's go back to the results. I'm sorry, I missed a step here. So when we go back to the results, we've got the same search summary here, right? So as I said, we've done the search now. Our trial date isn't for 6 months. We've got good information on this doctor, but you don't want to stop here. So what you can do is create an email alert. What this will do is on either a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, this is going to rerun the search for you. And if it collects any new results on Dr. Nason, it's going to deliver them right to your inbox with the frequency that you've requested. So it could be the morning of the trial and you're about to run out and bingo, your inbox lights up with another case in which she's testified, and it may just be the information you need to impeach her. So that's a rather neat thing. I'm going to show you 2 other searches. These are going to be much quicker than the first 2 I did, but before I get to that, let me show you one other feature that attorneys have told us that they really enjoy. Up here at the very top on the dashboard, we've got a billing function. And when we unfold that, this is a convenient alternative to you having to write down that we started this at 1:04 p.m. Eastern time and to have to keep calculating how much time we devoted to this. So for instance, let's add a hypothetical client for the purpose of this. You can type in the matter number of the case. We'll just type in anything. And then let's say that the client's name is Smith. We will save that. When we start work on the search for the Smith case, you will hit the start button. You will close out of this. You will do all the work you're doing. When you're done working on the Smith case, you can see that it's still running here in the background. You will hit stop and you know exactly how much time you dedicated to this case. And you can generate reports and do a lot of other neat things that make it very, very easy to bill back to the client for this function. Okay, so those are the 2 main searches. I've got a couple of other goodies that we don't normally demonstrate on the first go through, but since we have a little bit of time left in the webinar, I'm going to try to fit them in today. So let's go back to the field and clear out of everything we did the first time. I believe that does it. Okay, another thing you can search for is attorneys. You always want to know your adversary, very important in just about anything. So again, because I know New York best, we're going to use New York. One of our best contributors, a guy who's been working with us for many, many years and submits just about all of his cases to VerdictSearch. The gentleman's name is Robert Sasto. So as you can see here, we have an attorney field. So let's do a little bit of research on Mr. Sasto. We will type in his first and last name. And you can see when we click off that, he has submitted 138 cases to us. So the easiest thing or the simplest thing to do here is to run a search for Mr. Sasto and look at all of his cases. A neat thing to do is, let's say, for example, you want to find out which orthopedist Mr. Sasto likes to use. You can go back up to the expert field right here and just type in orthopedics. Sorry for the typo. Just type in orthopedics, and you will get a list of all the orthopedists. You'll get all the cases in which he has retained orthopedists. Or if you happen to know something about him, like I do, you can type in the name of a particular orthopedist, Dr. Yan Sun, based here in Queens, and you can see up here that there are 53 cases in which Dr. Sasto has used this doctor. And if you did the search, you'd find some pretty interesting stuff. I'd encourage you, if you have some free time, to run that search. I've probably edited close to 20,000 New York cases, and I can tell you that there's a particular injury that I have never seen other than cases in which Dr. Soon has testified, and I'll just leave it at that. Then the one last search I want to show you before we close it out. Let's clear everything out here. You can also search for parties in a case. Now this is almost always going to be something where you're using it for a defendant. If you look down here, we have a field for party names. So let's type in a particular defendant. In this case, we're going to select the city of New York. And once it's done calculating, because there are a lot of cases here, you can see that we've got 2,250 cases against the state of New York, against the city of New York in our database. Now, this is particularly useful if you're trying to see how the city may defend certain types of cases. Or let's say you're doing a premises case, you want to see if there's a history of falls, for example, at a particular site. This will be very helpful, especially if you're attempting to establish notice. Now, as we did in the other cases, we want to winnow this down because 2,200 cases is way too much for us to use. So you can go into the case type menu, which I'm circling right now. And when we unfold this, you'll see all the broad case types that are available. And as you saw with the injuries, they can all be unfolded. So for the purpose of this one, let's just click on slips, trips, and falls. And when we click off that, you can see we have 666 cases in our database involving claims of falls against the city of New York. Very helpful if you're trying that kind of a case. So again, you can search through them by hand, or you can put in any other number of parameters to help narrow this down. You can even use the broad field here to type in anything else. If perhaps you're only looking for cases in Brooklyn, now we're down to 280. And so that is about it. Before we go on to the search function, to the question and answer part of the webinar, I just want to briefly touch on the types of plans we have available for searching. We have both day and annual passes. Day, of course, is useful if you just want to do one or two searches right now. And annual, of course, gives you access for the entire year. Annual is the better value because what we found is that most of our annual clients spend upward of a week a year online, and that's not something you're going to get accomplished in a day pass. So the annual one is definitely the better value. We're going to follow up with you by email after the webinar, so all of this information will be in there. So if you don't get it now, you will get it. But if you wanted to get started now, you could go back to VerdictSearch.com and click on Get Your Free Trial, or let's go back there right now. When you click on Get Your Free Trial, it will take you to a quick form to fill out, and one of our research professionals will get back to you very quickly. Or you can move even quicker and use this phone number right here to contact them directly. And I'm looking over at their desk right now. They are there waiting for your call. So be sure to get in touch with them. As I said, we're going to follow up with you when this is all done with an email. So you'll have all this information there. We're going to post the webinar so you can revisit it at any time. I want to thank you for your time today. And now if there are any questions, we will take them.
So Glenn, we've gotten a single question so far, and for those of you who are joining us on the line, recall that you can ask questions using the question asking panel found in the bottom right-hand part of your screen. The question that's coming so far is one of a technical nature, and it has to do with the idea that is there the ability to have more than one case open at a time within the search interface?
Not at the same time. You have to open them. Let's try to go back to that. You have, let's do the City of New York field. You can only view them one at a time. However, if you were to, for example, email these to yourself, it would be in one document that you would be able to scroll through like this, and you could view all the cases at once. But in terms of having separate windows open on your computer at once, no, that would not be possible unless you had multiple tabs open at the same time when performing the searches side by side, and then you could flip back and forth between one tab and the next and view different cases.
Gotcha. So the best way to look at multiple cases at one time is to run your search and then export the data out and then look at it there in Excel or Word. Yes. Very good.
Correct.
If there are any more questions, we invite you to submit them at this time. We'll give you guys about a minute to do so. And if nothing else comes in, we'll refund you with a solid half hour on your Thursday.
Well, thank you again, everybody. Thanks for the time today.
Yes, Glenn, as we're waiting for any questions to come in, let me thank you for giving us some of your time to teach us all a little bit more about VerdictSearch and what its capabilities are. All right, looks like we have no other questions coming in, so Glenn, thank you again. Thank you, audience. Have a wonderful Thursday afternoon.
Thanks, guys.